Oh, hello everybody. Had to grab my coffee. Brian Stevens here with Mortgage Shots and the National Real Estate Post. I hope you're all having an absolutely fantastic time today. I hope you had a good week. We talked about this on Monday. We need to really just understand there are certain markets that you need to sprint in, and there's certain markets that you can walk in. Right now, we're at a time to sprint. We're at a time to sprint because this market is changing right before our eyes. We're not about to. We are in the midst of doing it. And you're going to either enjoy the fruits of your labors in the coming markets, or we're going to find ourselves in a personal recession. Which, by the way, that whole idea of a personal recession or a personal boom or bust, regardless of what the market is, you have the opportunity to create your personal boom or your personal bust, irrespective of the market that we're in. You could have a bad market and have a great business. Yesterday, I spoke about Denise Cordell. I could speak about Shannon Hoff. I could speak about a ton of people who are absolutely killing it in this market. You could have a great market and the wrong strategies and the wrong work ethic, and you could find yourself in a personal recession. So what we want to do is just understand that the actions that we take today are really going to have an effect when the market changes, and we're going to start to see significant changes right now. And I've been going over it this past week. If you have not seen, go back to Mortgage Shots, which is my show, and check out what we've talked about, because there's a lot of evidence right now, anecdotal evidence out there right now, that would suggest that our market is going to get a little bit better. We have a whole bunch of great stuff that we're going to talk about today. We got a bunch of graphs which are going to discuss some of the pillars. We're going to check boxes looking at graphs and figure out what we can extrapolate from that. But I want to start with this because I thought this was really pertinent, and let's jump right in. Oh, hold on. Well, now you're going to get to see what I do here. Let's go over here to window capture. All right, in case you're kind of curious right now, I thought I had this set up. This is called Streamlabs, and it's a way that you can go ahead and syndicate your lives to multiple streaming devices. It's actually really cool. It's called Streamlabs. So I thought I had my video capture device, so what I'm doing here is I'm adding that to my scene. And if you want to shoot live videos, you could do a heck of a lot worse than this. Okay, so now I have my screen capture device. And what I need to do is take my video capture device and I need to move it up top. And that puts me in here. Now we want to lock these bad boys down, lock that sucker down, lock it down. Now we are cooking with hot bacon grease, and I can go ahead and share my screen. So let's jump on this right now. I apologize about that. But again, this is Streamlabs. It's one of the tools I use. And again, we use technology that enhances us. We don't use technology that replaces us. This is technology that's enhancing what we're doing. Streamlabs is a great thing to do. If you don't want to use Streamlabs and you want a free version, you could go to something called OBS, and you could learn in very short order. You cannot syndicate with OBS. You would have to go over to Streamlabs, which is a more complicated version of OBS. But I digress. Okay, if you haven't seen the show before, it is called Mortgage Shots with the National Real Estate Post. Go there and check our stuff out, like it, share, and any questions that you have, or if you want to be part of our team, send me a comment, or here's my phone number that you're checking out right now. Give me a ring. I'd love to talk to you guys. Let's jump right into what I wanted to speak with you before we delve into our graphs. This is from a gentleman named Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt's a longtime viewer, and by the way, I appreciate you sending this. And if you guys have any information, please send it to me at Brian Stevens on Facebook, or you can send it to me at mortgageshots@gmail.com. But Eric brought up a great point that I think everybody should know. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and our investors have significantly increased their scrutiny of appraisal reports, particularly the photos including in those reports. They are now leveraging artificial intelligence technology to analyze images for inconsistencies between what is shown and what is reported on the appraisal, condition, quality, renovations, or deferred maintenance. These discrepancies are being flagged more frequently and can lead to repurchase demand or delays in the secondary market. What this means for us is that as is may no longer mean the property won't require repairs or a final inspection. Our underwriters are now taking a closer look at appraisal photos to ensure they align with the reported data. This is a proactive step to protect loan stability and reduce risk. However, it also means that we need to be more diligent when communicating with our borrowers and referral partners once the report is received. Man, ain't that the truth. Guys, I want you to think about this for a second. And this should come as no surprise to you whatsoever that we are starting to, our underwriters are starting to scrutinize appraisals more closely. We find most of our major metropolitan areas right now, we are in something called declining markets. Now, I spoke with a couple great realtors yesterday who've been, through the ringer, through good markets and bad markets, and they were talking about the fact that a lot of real estate agents right now who've been in this business for under 20 years have never truly been in a market that is declining. What that means is that our underwriters are going to start looking at our appraisals more closely. Now that we have, Google Maps and, Google Earth, and our pictures, and we have artificial intelligence, they're not just going to take the word of the appraiser. They're going to scrutinize that property. In the past, what they would do is they would look at the comparative analysis that an appraiser would do, and they've always done this, and they go see if there's any comps that have been overlooked or missed. And they'll go back and say, hold on a second, of the 5 comps that you use, of the 6 comps that you use, these 3, these 4 are really good, but these 2, well, you use these shitty comps that are old, and there were some really great comps that would have been better than these. However, the great, closer, more recently closed comps that you could have used would have pulled this price down. Therefore, I'm going to reject your appraisal, and I'm going to reassess the value at $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 lower. Of course, the appraiser can go out there and make their case. But what they're also going to do is they're going to depreciate the property. So if we see that our market is going down, if we look at our last 6 months and we've been declining at a rate of X, that is going to be applied towards what the value is today. So in markets that are going up, as we've seen for the past 20 years, we can say, well, we have market appreciation of 2 to 3% per month. Therefore, right now, the appraisal based on the previous comps, the deals that have already closed, we've got a value of X. We're going to use X plus 2% or 102%. That is an appreciating market. Now we're looking at what closed in the past in an appreciating market, and then we will take and apply that plus a certain factor based on how much appreciation we've seen over the past 6 months or a year. In declining markets, what we will do is we will start to look at not only what's taken place in the past, but we're also going to be looking at files and houses that are in contract more. Not just closings from the past, but we're also going to be looking at properties that are currently in contract and prepared to close, because that's going to be a better analysis of what's going on. The past in a declining market is going to have higher values. Therefore, those deals that are currently in contract are going to be lower in terms of what the value on the property is than in the past. They will look at more of these properties that are currently in contract, and what they'll do is rather than make it 102% of whatever value the appraisers feel they're going to come up with, they'll use 98% or 97%. So they're projecting values to continue to drop. Now, we know that a property acts as collateral against the loan. So the investor is more concerned about anything, they're concerned more than anything about that appraisal. So the underwriters are going to be scrutinizing appraisals much more closely going forward than they have in the past. I hope this makes sense to you guys. Okay? Now, so your underwriter's going to scrutinize it, but we have Google Earth, so they can actually go ahead and look at the property. But with artificial intelligence, what we're hearing right now is real estate agents are actually looking at the pictures on the property to see if they can find any material defects. Now, this should be kind of secondhand to us at this point, because we know that insurance companies have been looking at Google Earth now for months and months, actually maybe about a year now. So what they'll do, especially in like where we live in the West, they'll look at like high fire risk areas, and they'll look at that property and they'll see if there's anything that's up against the house. They'll see how close the tree lines are to the property. And these are issues which are going to determine what that insurance rate is going to be. Furthermore, Underwriters are going to be, and guys, you have to understand this. If you have a file right now and you're closing that as your primary residence, but let's say that person is going to use that property as a rental, don't do that. Do not do that. Because what underwriters are also doing, what they've come keen to, and boy, isn't this a game of cat and mouse? What they're doing is they're going on Airbnb and other, short-term rental sites to see if you have that property up for rent. And I've actually spoke with underwriters to say, my God, they're closing this as their primary residence. I go to Airbnb and I look up the property address and they got the damn thing posted on Airbnb before the deal's even closed as their primary residence. They're telling me they're committing loan fraud. So when you're sitting down with your clients, just understand that you guys are under a microscope right now, especially with the properties. This is a great point. This is not a time to cut corners because your files are going to be scrutinized more closely. Furthermore, for real estate agents, when you're putting these contracts out there and you have not gone through down markets before, we cannot just assume that you're going to get the value. I had a conversation with a real estate agent. Again, I think this was yesterday. It could have been the day before. As you get older, your brain starts to all the days kind of blend together. But the agent said something to the effect of, the property, it's like, they already dropped the property by $70,000. Can you imagine losing $70,000 and you're telling me that they're going to need to lose another $50,000 when this is what the house is worth? I'm like, do you hear yourself talking? You haven't had an offer on the house in 6 months. You dropped it $70,000 and you're treating this as if it's money lost by your seller, and you're going to have to drop it another $50,000 and your seller's saying they're not willing to do it. Well, they can certainly go ahead and take the house off the market, but I'm here to tell you that is in fact what the house is worth. If you've had your property on the market for 6 months because you think that's a value, I guarantee you that's not the value. The value is what somebody's willing to pay for it. So that house has already taken a $70,000 haircut. They're going to have to take another $50,000 haircut, and the damn thing still might not sell. And what they're worried about is the property across the street. I think we have one that's going for, I think the house is, let's call it, they had it at 1.8. They're going to have to drop it down to 1.5. They're like, well, there's a house that's bigger across the street going for 2.3. I'm like, it ain't going to go for 2.3 because when you sell yours for 1.5, that bigger house across the street that's going for 2.3 is going to go for 1.8 if they're lucky. And oh, by the way, then you have to get appraisals on these things. And here's what's going to happen. The insurance company is going to look at this thing to make sure they want to put insurance on this, which you may or may not get. And our underwriters are going to look at these things as well to see if the house is worthy of collateral against a loan that they're underwriting the file against. This, my friends, is what we're up against. And realtors out there, this is why a lot of our files are closing late these days. Because, when things get tight and we are in a downward cycle, which we are right now, I'm not in a downward cycle. Well, your underwriter doesn't know that. And right now, underwriters are looking at the collective, mortgage companies are looking at the collective, and they are going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. That's how it's going to be for the foreseeable future. Now, before you start to think this is a bunch of bullshit and it pisses you off, this is just the market that we're in. All I'm saying is write your loans. And again, thematically, what I've been talking about for this entire week is because we have a 15% fallout rate on files right now, which is unfathomable. Go get all your inspections, including your appraisal, done up front. 1, that's a smart thing to do. 2, it's going to give you a chance to close that deal on time. 3, you can address the type of issues I'm talking about early rather than later in a file before everybody gets emotional and ticked off on these things. But 4, it also ties your buyer up to the contractual obligations that they've already inked their signature to. Wildly, wildly important things. Okay, now that we've got through that, now that we fixed Open Broadcaster, let's go back to screen sharing and let's go through some graphs right now. And again, any questions or comments that you might have, put them down below. Let me know. I love to hear from you. Again, I just got a message from this dude today that we shared on the show. I love it when you send me information because then I can go ahead and bring it out to you guys as well. So let's go and make this thing work. Okay. Here, and by the way, thank you, Eric. That was super, super cool of you. All right, let's see. We're going to go through that one tomorrow. Okay, what we're looking at here is delinquency rates on single-family mortgages. This is, we're looking at this over the past year. Have we noticed anything? Our seriously delinquency rates, they've gone up. Now, it doesn't look that big. It's 1.73 and it's gone up to 1.79. And if we were to take this graph and look at this over a longer period of time, which we can certainly do, we'll see an ebb and flow that goes back and forth. So I'm going to take this and we're going to go this out to a 5-year period. And you can see, of course, 5 years ago back in 2020 during COVID, we had higher numbers and we've gone down. If we look at it, this is a 1 year. we are certainly trending up. If we look at this over a 10-year period, we have gone down. But if we max this out, check it out. We saw delinquency rates go absolutely through the roof here. And you notice how quickly this skyrocketed. It started out very short. See this little tiny bump here? And then boom, we lit the jets and we went up into outer space, didn't we? Now, this, of course, is the Great Recession. And then afterwards, everything came down. Values, by the way, are proportionally opposite to delinquencies as well. Does that make sense? Values are proportionally opposite of what you're looking at. So when we see our delinquency rates going through the roof here, that means our values are dropping equally. When our delinquencies go down, our values go up proportionally the same. Now you see our delinquencies went down here. We saw this little bip. This over here is COVID, which, by the way, if we look at this on a 5-year period, it's a pretty big bump. This big bump over here on a 10-year period, a little blip right here, but when we look at it in a shorter time frame, it's huge. Okay, so our delinquencies have gone down. However, I think what we're going to see if we look at our delinquencies on a 1 year, see how we got this little bump going up here. The question we have to ask ourselves is that little bump over here, which looks like the little bump over here on a shorter period, are we going to see the same type of stratospheric rise in delinquency rates? And right now, I'm going to show you some other graphs here. It certainly seems like that is on the horizons for us. Okay, what we're looking at here is all consumer loans. Here's our delinquency rate, and this is going back to 2020. This is why we should be concerned about mortgage delinquencies. I just showed you a couple of graphs. You're like, Brian, that's not that bad. Aha. People are going to make their mortgage payment before they make their credit card payment. What's going on with their credit card payment? What's going on with their installment payments? Well, here's what we're looking at over a 5-year period, and you can see that this thing has gone up drastically, significantly. So this falls before mortgages fall. So is this a canary in the coal mine with our delinquencies on consumer loans? You be the judge of that. This is our delinquencies on credit card loans. Isn't it interesting how our credit card loans look a hell of a lot like our consumer loans? This is going to be installment loans and all those other ones. This is our credit card debt. What's happened with credit card debt delinquencies? And again, we've gone through the roof on these as well. Now, if we're going to go ahead and pull this out over a longer period of time, so we are looking at a 5-year period, so let's look at 10 years. Yeah, that's pretty stark, isn't it? In fact, when we look at our credit card delinquencies, check us out. This was during the Great Recession, right before the last massive precipitous fall off when mortgages like absolutely tanked. Do you notice that our credit card delinquencies are higher today than they were before the delinquencies of the Great Recession? So we know when we had delinquencies back in 2020, let's go back here to 2008. I'm sorry, in 2008, we were significantly higher, weren't we? But when we saw our last recession over here, our COVID recession, we are significantly higher than that. And in fact, this may not seem that high, but our credit card delinquencies are certainly going to play a problem in terms of what we're doing. If we go to a 1-year period, it looks like we're going down. If we look at it over a 5-year period, well, our delinquencies have gone up significantly. And again, this is credit card debt. We're currently holding about $1.8 trillion in credit card debt. So if this falls, it's going to be problematic for everything. Okay, what we're looking at here is our personal savings rate. This is our personal savings rate over the past year. I believe this is a year. Yes, this is over the past year. What's happened with our savings rate? It's low, isn't it? It's not good. The average savings right here, we're sitting over at 4.6% with a 0 on it. We're looking at $4,600 in average savings. If we look at this over a 10-year period, our savings went up. This was COVID during the Great American Giveaway. Okay, and then in 2021, we saw a little bit of savings here, and we've dropped off the map. This is problematic for us because, once again, we don't have money in reserves in the event we find ourselves in harm's way. Does that make sense? Okay, what we're looking at here is our home ownership rate in the United States. Does everybody deserve a house? I don't know. But right now, over the past 5 years, we have the lowest home ownership rate that we've had. Once again, let's pull back out and look at this over, here's our home ownership rate over a 5-year period. Let's look at our home ownership rate over a 10-year period. 2020, again, this is during COVID. People were buying a lot of houses. This is when we were nesting. This is when we didn't have to go into work. And look at our home ownership rate dropped off. Now, if we look at our home ownership rate over, let's see, so this is going to be 1960. So we're looking at about a 60-year period. Our home ownership rate sitting here seems like it's right at about the median, but we are definitely trending once again in the wrong direction. The question then becomes, at these prices and these rates, with the amount of credit card debt that we're holding, with the fact that people are starting to fall behind and we're starting to find cracks in the dam, do we anticipate that this number is going to continue to go up or go down with home ownership rate? Here's where we're at right now. In a 1-year period, if we look at it on the max, well, it looks like we'll probably fall back down to somewhere in the mid-90s. Wouldn't you think so? Is that number going to go up or down? Probably has a lot to do, depends on what we are doing over here. Okay, now what we're looking at is our 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and we're going back to 2015. So this is going to put us at, 2015, let's see, 15, 35 years, somewhere back there. Wait, 15, 25, a 10-year period. My bad, I'm trying to do math off the cuff. It's a little early in the morning and I haven't finished my coffee. Okay, so if we're looking at our average mortgage rate, we are pretty much higher than we've been over the past 10 years. What was this down here? This was the Great American Giveaway when the average interest rate was 2.65%. The problem is our market is based on this 2.65%. Our values are based on this 2.65% rate. Again, proportionally, this is when we saw home ownership go significantly up. It's when rates dropped down during COVID and everybody bought a house. Remember that spike on home ownership? Let's see if we can find it here. Here's our spike in home ownership. Why do we have the spike in home ownership over here? Let's go back over here to mortgage interest rates. It's because rates went down. This went down proportionally to home ownership going up. Now look what happened with interest rates. We went from 2.67% on average in a very short period of time back in 2021. And if we go over here to 2023, we're sitting at 7.76. We went up over 5% in a very short period of time. You see how, do you see how our mortgage interest rates went up 5% over this 2-year period of time here that we're looking at? See how that goes up? If we go back over here, that was going up as this was going down. When rates were going up, we were going down. Okay? When rates are going down, home ownership's going up, and vice versa. So if we see a drop in interest rates, is this going to help folks buy houses? And the answer is it certainly will. But we're not going to see the type of home ownership rates that we're looking for and the type of transactions we're looking for until some of these sellers start to come off the rates. We spoke about this during the entire week with Lennar dropping their prices over the past 3 years by 25%. Pulte's going to have to follow suit. Cena's going to have to follow suit. And even those who previously owned single-family residents who want to sell their homes are also going to have to follow suit in order for us to get back to a healthy market. And guys, this is transforming and happening right before our eyes. Okay, what we're looking at is new privately owned housing units authorized for permits. So here's what's happened with our permits. Now going back here, this is 2008. These are all this was a buildup to the Great Recession here. Look at how housing permits are future houses to be built. Now, what we saw is rates going up, our subprime loan debacle, our FHA loan debacle, and our foreclosure debacle for the Great Recession, and our home ownership rates dropped significantly, didn't they? And our permits dropped significantly. Now, after this, we saw our boom, and permits went up. And what are we doing right now? Well, our permits are dropping off a cliff. Again, this is going back to over a maximum period of time. If we look at this over a 1-year period of time, what's taken place with permits? Permits have gone down, and we can expect to see this number to continue going down as we move forward. Okay, this is a very interesting one, isn't it? This is the reason for home ownership. You can make all the arguments that you want in the world why you shouldn't own a house. But the truth of the matter is when you buy a house, that first payment should be the most you ever make for your housing expense payment as long as you own that house, because you have stopped inflation on that property permanently. As you receive raises, your monthly mortgage payment is going to become a smaller portion of what your pay is, meaning your payment will effectively go down. The opposite is true of rents. Now, here's rents back now, and they're saying rents are more affordable now than ever. Rents are going down. People can't afford to buy houses. All these properties that are being built, they're being built to rent. Rents are going down. Well, look at what's taken places from rents. This is going back to 1945. From 1945 to today, tell me where in here we have any type of logical, defensible position to tell somebody that their rent payments in the future are going to go down. You don't need to buy a house. Just rents are going to come down. Look at all these rental properties. Look what Minnesota did. They built all these fantastic rentals for everybody. Isn't this great? Rents are going to come down. Now, I want you to look at a graph here. Now, this is from the St. Louis Federal Reserve. Tell me over a nearly 100-year time span, what would make you suggest rents are going to do anything but continue to go up? When you buy a house, what takes place? We know what takes place. It's going to fix that, and that first payment should be the highest you ever pay. And of course, we didn't even discuss refinances there. For loan officers and real estate agents who have clients who are vacillating on the fence right now, and they just, I don't know if I want to buy a house, this is the graph you should show them. This is from the Federal Reserve. Here is your future with rents. You already think you're paying too much in rent? You think that house payment is going to be too much? Well, you stop the increases when you buy a house. Trust me, your rents are going to continue to go up. I mean, for me, this graph right here explains itself. I don't need to try to talk somebody into buying a house. If I show them this, I could show them this graph and say, you draw your own conclusion. The truth of the matter is, we can very seldom talk people into anything. They have to draw their own conclusions. If you want to be persuasive, you need to convince them that they convince themselves to make the decision that you think they should make. And of course, we want to make the right ones. Okay, now this is inflation. How are we doing with inflation? So inflation, this is back during Volcker, when Volcker was the head of the Federal Reserve, and we saw mortgage interest rates of 18%. This is when Volcker raised the Fed fund rate, 5% over the course of a month like a lunatic, and freaked everybody out. And what we saw is 40 years of low inflation because Volcker was crazy. Now what we see over here with Jerome Powell, this is Volcker light. So Volcker went over there and continued, as we saw over the past couple of years, continued to raise the Fed fund rate to try to get inflation under control. And you can see he didn't do it as well as Volcker. We didn't go as high as Volcker, but we went down. So this is Volcker light. This is Volcker 2.0. This is Volcker 1, the biggest inflationary bubble we've ever seen and the biggest drop. Here's my question to you, and I'm dead serious about this. So right now we have inflation, which I guess if I'm going to stink eye this thing, over the past 60 years, I'm going to say we're sitting right around average. Our inflation is neither high or low. But to me right now, does it feel like to you that everything is just more expensive and difficult? My wife and I were talking about this today. I said, you know what? These restaurants are not going to re-laminate menus and drop prices. They've laminated the new higher prices, and we're going to have to stick with it. You see, inflation is something that is fluid. It continues to move. What we have is we have the higher peaks of inflation, and I simply don't see the cost of goods going down across the board. Of course, energy can go up and down, like gasoline. Food can go up and down if you're buying it from grocery stores, of course. But if you're going out to eat, if you're buying cars, if you're buying houses, these are kind of fixed at higher rates, and I simply don't see them going down. My question to you is do you feel like inflation has come down to a point that reflects this graph? Are your clients at a point to where they feel inflation reflects this graph? I'm not sure if that's the case for me. And finally, we have this one. This is consumer sentiment, how consumers feel about things. And this is going to go back over the past 10 years. Our sentiment over on the right-hand side is ranked at 58.2. What does that mean, Brian? I have no idea what it means. But what we can do is compare it against different numbers to see good sentiment and bad sentiment. And what I can tell you over the past 10 years, the only time we've seen lower sentiment is going to be back a few months ago in April of 2025. And of course, if we go back here to June of 2022 at a 5.0, and we are currently sitting at a 5.8. Again, this is at a 10-year period. Right before the right before COVID, we were sitting at 101. So we're about 20% lower than we were then. And if we are going to go ahead and pull out and look at this over a maximum period of time, our sentiment is down here. And if I stink eye this thing, people don't feel good about where they're at or the direction our economy is going right now. That's why when I look at inflation, I say inflation looks pretty flat. Well, I'll tell you what, consumer sentiment, how people feel about inflation and feel about their finances, does not reflect the fact that our inflation has gone down. This is the reason why buyers are sitting the fence. They're looking at the market, their sentiment is down, and they're saying, we think this market is going to continue to drop. The question is, what do you think? Should somebody buy right now, or should they continue to sit the fence? Are rates going to go down? They could. Are values going to go down? They could. Do we want to wait for them to come down? Maybe we should. Maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. That's your decision. But what I can tell you for sure is this. If you choose to sit the fence and wait some time because you're waiting for a lower sales price, or you're waiting for lower interest rates, or you're waiting to pay down your credit cards, or you're waiting for inflation to go down, or whatever the hell you're waiting for, just rest assured your rent is about to go up. That is a fact. Your housing expense, the largest portion of your monthly income, is driving upwards as we sit here in Spink. So we can talk about rates, we can talk about prices, we can talk about values. But when somebody goes from renter to buyer, they freeze their housing expense in perpetuity. Through refinances and through pay raises, your housing expense will be frozen today and will only go down in the future. So wait if you want. You can certainly go ahead and do it. But your biggest expense is marching in the wrong direction the longer you're sitting on the fence. Think about that. Your greatest expense, your housing expense, is marching upward while you wait to buy. So if you can buy, my personal counsel to you would be you probably should buy. Listen, guys, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, obviously leave them in the comments down below. Like and share and all that good stuff. And with that said, you enjoy your weekend. Go Niners. I can't believe they're winning. And watch the meteor shower. That might be kind of fun. Alrighty, guys. Oh, and if you have any questions,